that Atlanta Falcons radio show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live on the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcons Central Radio Show. Gonna be berserk, you heard. We ain't even tripping, catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the Pro Football Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Car Ass Sick. What? This right here is a good present for you. Enjoy my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. Chillin', doing.
Welcome back to the Falcons Central Radio Show on ProFootballCentral.com. I am your host, Aaron Freeman, joined with my good friend, Scott Karasik, who is just warmed up his brain with a fresh run of Jeopardy. So that
I love that show, man.
Yep, we are entering, football's back, guys. I don't know if people knew this, but week one of the regular season is about to start this weekend. We have the kickoff game between the Broncos and the Ravens on Thursday, but more importantly to all you Falcon fans out here that are listening to this show, maybe a couple of Saints fans, Falcons-Saints, big rivalry game, week one.
I'm hoping the result is very similar to the first game the Saints ever played, which I think was like 76-7, that the Falcons just crushed them. And ever since then, there's been a little bit of a rivalry. I mean, I'm sorry that we big brothered you guys, but you deserved it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sorry.
Yeah, anybody that's a regular listening to this show knows how much Scott hates the Saints. So I'm sure tonight's show is going to be a good one. We have a couple of guests coming up, one of which should be very familiar to both Falcons and Saints fans.
Yes, Morten Andersen, the Danish guy who wound up kicking the hell out of the ball in 1998 and forever endearing himself into Falcons fans' hearts with that kick. Just one pop, and we love you, Morten. Without you, we would not have been in the Super Bowl. And for that, we thank you. And when he comes on the line, I will tell him the exact same thing, because he's awesome. He's not even an American.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. He is not an American, but we will claim him as such regardless because of his greatness.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be an American to be a Falcon.
That is very true. Noriaki Kinashita can vouch for that.
Whatever happened to that guy? He was on the practice squad for like 2 years, and then I think Mike Smith came in and was like, "Nah, dude, you suck."
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, yeah. I really like that guy.
I liked him because they always did the videos on him. Like, I think it was like Freddie Mac, the fullback. He would always do his interview show, and that would be the first one they'd go to. It'd be like WWE always going to Yoshitatsu, who barely speaks English as well, and just being like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Me no speak English."
Yeah.
So how you feeling about this week, man? We win. Like, we haven't played yet. We're going to win. It's really...
Yeah.
Yes, we know who he is, Brian. But for those that don't, he was a Japanese wide receiver that played for Atlanta. And his best football was in, unfortunately, NFL Europe.
I thought he was a decent special teamer for like that one preseason that he played in Atlanta.
Yeah, that one preseason game that he played in Atlanta.
Okay. It was a small sample size, but I thought he he showed out pretty well.
I mean, to be fair, he was competing with Brent Grimes and a couple other, not Brent Grimes,
Alan
Eric
Rossum
Weems.
was back then, right there?
Alan Rossum and Eric Weems. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And of course, the J-pop.
Well, Scott, you want to take a break and come back with our first guest?
We can do that.
All right.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order. Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
Falcon Central Radio Show on PFC. Aaron Freeman. We're joined today by our guest, Dave Choate of the Falcoholic. If you're a Falcon fan, you probably know of Dave and his website, which you can find on SB Nation. How you doing, Dave?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Dave. We are now in the regular season. We've gone through training camp. We've gone through preseason. Off-season's over. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of real football. How are you emotionally going into this first week of the season?
I'm in a good place, I think. You know, it's Saints game, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Probably going to be a close game. We're probably going to all bite our nails to nubs as usual. But, you know, feeling good about the team. Obviously, there are some concerning spots. You know, they just signed True Blood for a reason. You know, that there wasn't a ton of proven depth at right tackle. You know, we're going to see how Trufant does. But, you know, I do feel like this is, once again, a playoff team and a Super Bowl contender. So, feeling good.
All right, that's good to hear. Yeah, definitely with the preseason and the Falcons going 0-4. I know I had a couple conversations with you, and you kept reminding me how it's the preseason, it doesn't matter. But there were times where I got into, you know, I was going into regular season mode with the anxiety and the anger and all that type of stuff. So I feel like I got in good practice this summer, and now we can get back to the real emotions of the regular season.
Yeah, I think, you know, you needed that practice because even if this Falcons team is a bit different and hopefully we don't have the same short yardage frustrations, some of the play calling frustrations we've had in years past, yeah, there's still going to be plenty of time to curse at your TV, so you got to be in mid-season form.
Exactly. So you talked about the Falcons signing True Blood today. That is news for people. The Falcons did pick up ex-Tampa Bay Buccaneers right tackle Jeremy Trueblood. My thoughts on this signing is I do think the Falcons needed some help. I certainly feel a lot more confident in Trueblood than I would have in Taron Jones or even Ryan Schrader, at least in the early going of the season. But, you know, being a resident of North Carolina, I've gotten to see a lot of Panthers games over the years. And it seemed like every year that Trueblood was the starting right tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whether it was Charles Johnson or Julius Peppers, he was getting absolutely decimated. And those images are like burned into my retinas. So I'm not that excited that he's going to bring a whole lot to the table for the Falcons, but it's a step in the right direction. Where do your thoughts lie on that, Dave?
Well, I think, you know, when we saw that the Falcons were going to go into the season tentatively with Ryan Schrader and Taron Jones behind Lamar Holmes, everybody was a little bit concerned, but it kind of felt like that wasn't it because Jones is such a developmental prospect. So I think just adding, you know, a tackle who has starting experience in the NFL to that depth chart is a step in the right direction. You know, this is somebody that can go in ahead of Schrader, who, you know, is still learning the NFL game. I think he's got some promise, but he's clearly not, ready to step in yet. So, the big knock on Trueblood is his pass protection. And, I think people are saying, well, we need to get a tackle because Holmes is going to get Matt Ryan killed. Well, so is Trueblood. So, and probably even more so. So really this makes more sense as, having a proven veteran backup there, somebody who's a good run blocker and an option, in case of emergency, in case Holmes really is not ready for this. They have somebody they can plug in and play. But, out of all the veteran tackles out there, and there wasn't a lot to pick from, I don't know that he would have been my first choice. But he's here, he is, again, a good run blocker. He's veteran depth. He's a backup to Holmes, I'm hoping. And, you can't ask for much more than that for on-the-cheap post-cut signing.
I can't disagree with you. I think at best he's going to be the number 6 offensive lineman. I don't think this week he's going to see it. I don't even know if he's even going to be active this week. But I think the idea was they didn't want Taron Jones to be that last guy. And I can't blame him because he's raw. Big guy, good athlete, but raw. Very, very, very raw and does not fit. He doesn't fit the scheme, I don't feel like, at left tackle, and he doesn't have the power and drive to be a right tackle, so he's kind of a tweener himself. But I'm more comfortable with Taron Jones than I am with Jeremy Trueblood, to be honest with you, because of what Aaron said. In South Carolina, that's all we got. That's all we get is freaking Carolina Panthers games, and seeing Trueblood get absolutely decimated, just embarrassed by Greg Hardy and Charles Johnson and Julius Peppers the past couple of years has been. I trust Lamar Holmes more than I trust Trueblood because I think Lamar Holmes at least has the athleticism to play the position and will eventually get better. I don't think Trueblood will eventually get better. I think he capped out as a backup lineman. Now, looking at other parts of the team, what are your thoughts on the linebacker situation? Having the Warlock, Paul Warlow, and Joplo Bartu as the last 2 guys to make it, as opposed to any of the other 6 that were in camp?
Well, I think, you called that one. And my kudos to you because I liked Warlow coming out of college, but I was looking at, Schiller and Clancy and Banks, and especially with Clancy and Schiller, maybe less upside there than there was with Warlow and Bartu. But, I thought these guys can probably step right in on special teams. They're solid enough tacklers and run stoppers. They'll probably make the team. And what I think impressed me was that the coaching staff looked at the 2 guys who, blew the doors off in preseason, who were the best athletes, and both Warlow and Bartu, particularly Bartu, at times, just looked crazy athletic. And that's what they've been missing for I feel like years now for the backup linebackers. They've had Mo Pete, they've had, Robert James. These are guys in Mo Pete's case who's a KG veteran, great, clubhouse leader, etc. But, he was kind of on his last legs, especially toward the end, and James was really topped out as a special teamer. I feel like both of these guys, they'll have their struggles initially. They're undrafted free agents. It's tough to come into the NFL and make an impact right away, but there's a ton of upside here. I mean, people keep saying to me, well, could you see them starting this year? And no, not this year, but I don't think it's completely crazy to suggest that both of them could start down the line. So I got to say I was wrong, but I'm glad I was wrong. It seems like they really gambled on the upside.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. Sorry to cut you off, and I just wanted to go into a couple of things that I saw with Warlow. Would you agree with my comparison that Warlow is very similar to Keith Brooking?
I would say so. I would actually say that he's similar, but he might be even a better raw athlete, and I think that's very appealing.
I'll agree with you there. Now go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of the linebackers, we had this first game against the Saints, and, so much of, it seems, the Falcons' success when trying to match up with a team like the Saints comes at the linebacker position. I was just watching some tape of last year's game earlier this afternoon, and so much of the Falcons' game plan under Mike Nolan seemed to be putting Sean Weatherspoon against Darren Sproles and having, a rotating body of players up against Jimmy Graham because he was so effective against the Falcons in that first matchup. But in the second matchup, they kind of mixed up their looks to try to confuse Drew Brees. And obviously it worked to great effect as Brees threw 5 interceptions. This season, there's expected to be some changes at the linebacker position, particularly with the Falcons' utilization of the nickel sub-package, with the expectation that Akeem Dent will step in for Stephen Nicholas in that sub-package. Have you heard anything different, Dave? And where does your opinion lie on whether that's going to be an improvement for the defense this year?
Well, I think, that's about what I've heard. I think Stephen Nicholas has off season long been sort of an enigma. He's hurt coming back, thankfully, but people can't seem to decide whether he can cover linebackers, he can't cover linebackers, he's losing speed, he's the same athlete he ever was. But I mean, personally, putting Dent into the game for him in those nickel packages makes a lot of sense to me because Dent is younger, he's a better athlete, he's grown a bit quietly. I think a lot of people still say to themselves, well, and all he can do is stop the run, but that's not true. He is a good player. He's grown during his time in the league. I think that this is somebody that can be an asset in nickel packages. And I mean, Nicholas, we sort of know what we're going to get with him, and it's not necessarily always the best in coverage. So I think putting Dent out there and seeing what he can do, and if he really falters, maybe you look at, putting Roy Bierman out there or putting one of the undrafted free agents out there, as crazy as it sounds this early on. But they have more options. I don't think they, last year it was basically you couldn't throw Dent out there because he wasn't ready for that. They didn't really have anybody else as a backup who could step in the nickel packages, and that's so important because it's so integral to what Mike Nolan does on defense, especially with the slate of passers we're facing this year.
I completely agree with you there. And I think one thing that I saw today was John Manasso of Fox was saying that Mike Nolan said that he wants to put Bartu in on the dime packages, which makes a ton of sense if they're going to try and cover Jimmy Graham with him or bracket Jimmy Graham with Bartu and, say, William Moore or Thomas Deku. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great idea. That's actually, I hadn't heard that yet, but it's an awesome thing to hear. That they recognize that somebody like Bartu can be useful even now. I mean, you can make the argument, I think, that he's already better positioned, to help out in coverage than most of the guys at linebacker on this roster, including some of the starters. So I think that getting him on the field in those packages, and again, as you said, getting a safety to help out with that because you don't want to trust him necessarily one-on-one with Jimmy Graham. You can barely trust anyone one-on-one with Jimmy Graham, but being able to get, your best athletes out on the field and put them in a position to cover a great tight end like that, that's a huge thing. So that's something they couldn't, again, do last year, I think.
No, I agree. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back with Morton Anderson.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
Hey, this is Matt Bryant, kicker for the Atlanta Falcons. This is FalconsCentral Radio.
Welcome back to Falcon Central Radio. We are joined on the Bonita Tequila hotline from a 7-time Pro Bowler, one of only 3 players in NFL history to be named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame All-Decade 80s and 90s team, first team. He is the all-time leading scorer in points, games played, field goals made, as well as being the second oldest player to ever play in an NFL football game. Played 25 years in the National Football League, one of the greatest kickers of all time. None other than Morton Anderson. You know him, you love him. How you doing, Morton?
Doing fantastic, guys. It's just enjoying the nice evening here with the boys, with my boys and family, and relaxing, enjoying my retirement from football, but still involved in lots of stuff.
Awesome. You've been retired for a couple of years now, but you played for a very long time. What's your kicking range like nowadays? You still make those 40-yarders?
I haven't tried. What I've been doing now is kind of passing on some of the knowledge to the younger guys, college kids. We got the Alabama kid, Cade Foster, and Chandler Cancero and Clemson. Those are two of my guys. So they were both playing in big games this past Saturday, obviously Clemson winning at Georgia and Alabama beating Virginia Tech. So it was pretty fun to follow those guys. And so I don't really get out and kick much anymore. But if I really had to, I could probably make an extra point anyway.
Okay. That's better than I can do, so. You played 13 years for both 13 years for the Saints and 8 years for the Falcons. Falcons are playing the Saints this weekend. It's a big rivalry. Do you have any particular allegiance, or are you just a general fan?
I kind of ride the fence. In that one. Having spent 21 years with those two franchises in total, that's a tough game for me to root for either way. I kind of go with the home team, so I get the best of both worlds. I get the Saints when they play down there, and I get the Falcons when they play in Atlanta. But kind of go right down the middle on that one. Wear a jersey with half Saints and half Falcons. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
definitely understand.
As a man who's played for both,
I'm sorry.
As a man who's played for both teams, though, you kind of earned that right, you know.
Well, I don't know if I earned the right, but I choose to. That's the route I choose to go right now. I mean, they're both very good football teams. It's a good division. It should be an exciting year for them, and I think the Saints are rebuilding on defense a little bit. I think the Falcons might be a little more explosive. If you look at the whole team, might be a little better. So I would say I would give the edge to the Atlanta Falcons this year as far as personnel, but anything can happen when those two teams play.
Okay. We were discussing earlier about how one of our favorite moments as Falcon fans was your game-winning kick against the Vikings in the 98-99 NFC Championship game that sent the team to the Super Bowl. Is that, or is there another accomplishment or a moment throughout your long playing career that you kind of sit back and think, wow, I really did that?
Well, I really think the NFC Championship game, it wasn't as much, wow, I did that. It was more like, wow, we did that. I think there's a big difference there, and I really felt that win up in the Metrodome on January 17th in '99 was a team win. I mean, we were not expected to win. The Vikings were very explosive. They had set all kinds of NFL records. I think they were at the time they had 15-1 in the regular season. I think we were 14-2. So we were both two good football teams. And hard to believe when you're 14-2, you were, I think we were like a 2-touchdown underdog in the game, but we just hung around. We didn't get blown out in the beginning. We were behind most of the game, but we just kind of hung around, and we were able to move the football and score at the end when they missed a kick, and then we were able to win it in overtime. But we made big plays on all three phases, and so it was a we win, and I think that's important to recognize. But as far as the kick, certainly was a big kick, obviously, because it put us in the Super Bowl, and it put kind of an exclamation mark on a big day and a big night for us, and it was fitting that way because of what it brought us and what it brought Atlanta.
Okay. Dave, do you have anything you want to ask?
Yeah, I actually I've always wondered, what was the toughest stadium for you to kick in due to just conditions or just anything, crowd noise, etc.?
Well, as a kicker, you kind of look at the surface and say, well, am I going to have good traction? Am I going to slip? Chicago was probably the worst field that way. It was built, the grass was on top of sand, and it gave way too easily. And couple that with some treacherous winds and weather right on Lake Michigan, I would say Chicago was probably the toughest place to play. There were several. I mean, Philly was tough in the winter, and New England up there, and the Giant Stadium in the Meadowlands. There were lots of places that were tough, but I would say Chicago was probably the toughest place as far as combination of the elements, the surface, and so forth.
Okay. Yeah. More, I wanted to ask you a question about the Hall of Fame. This past year, I think you had the honor of being a semi-finalist. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this was your first year of eligibility?
Right. I made it to the final 25 guys, yeah.
Okay. And as people are probably aware, there's only one full-time specialist currently in the Hall of Fame. It's about Jan Stenerud. Got inducted a little bit over 20 years ago. It would seem that, in your first year of eligibility, the fact that you made it to one of the final 25 would indicate that at some point in the near future, you're going to get in. But I was just curious, what are your thoughts on, it seems like there's a dearth of special teams players in the Hall of Fame. I know a lot of people have been lobbying for a guy like Ray Guy, who's widely considered the best punter, to get a shot. If you were standing in front of the Hall of Fame voters, what would you say to them about, possibly letting more special teams players in, or why they should let more special teams players in?
It's an interesting question. One which I have no impact on. My body of work is done, but I guess I would hand them an NFL record book and say, take a look at, the top guys in there, the top names, scores, years of service, and things like that, and consider longevity, consider where do the players, where do the specialists that are being considered, where do they rank and where do they fit in the history and the context of the history of the game? I think when you talk about the Hall of Fame, you have to look at, was that person the greatest or one of the greatest at his position in the context of the history of the game, not just his position, but also throughout time, since football was invented. And then look at the names, and then that's going to get whittled down to a few guys. You'll have a big body, a pool of guys to start with, and then when you start looking at who are the best at their position, or who was now take it one step further and say in the history of the game, then I think you'll have your answer. And I don't know what that answer is, but I think my body of work speaks for itself. If I was to try to sell myself, which I'm uncomfortable doing, but if I was, I would say just take a look at the, where I fit in the history of the game and at my position. I would say that it'd be hard pressed not to seriously consider it. But so the same with Ray Guy, same with Steve Tasker. There are other guys deserving, Gary Anderson, and there are other guys that deserve to be in there. And so it's really difficult for me to kind of guess what's going to happen. I'm just going to, I'm not going to really spend too much energy thinking about it, quite honestly, because there's nothing I can do about it, and it's out of my hands. I don't control it.
I understand. You have a foundation, correct? What are some of the work that you guys do with that?
Yeah, my wife and I started back in 2009 after retired. We started the Morton Anderson Family Foundation. We're heavily involved with the Special Operation Forces and their families, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marines, trying to help these guys when they come back from overseas theaters, try to help them integrate back into becoming productive, happy citizens, and also recognizing them for their sacrifices and what they've done for this country. These are true heroes. I know you talk about sports heroes, but really to me, no greater hero than a serviceman or woman who's trained themselves and gone to battle for this great country. So that's one of the areas we spend a lot of time raising money and funds for the Special Operation Forces. Those are the very best at what they do, and also quality of life programs for young people, youth, through fitness and education, prevention of obesity, and those are some of the other areas that we concentrate on here in Atlanta. And basically the motto of the foundation is what you give will grow and what you keep will perish. We try to give our love, our energies, and our funds, and put people together and do good things for these very deserving causes.
Okay, that sounds great. Dave, do you have any more questions before we get Mr. Anderson out of here?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, looking at the kicking landscape today in the NFL, do you have a guy that maybe you enjoy watching you think is the best currently in the NFL?
The precision has evolved so much, guys. So without picking a guy, I would just say that, the norm used to be 70%. When I played, 80% was really above average. Now, if you're 80% accurate, you may get cut. These guys now are kicking at 90, 95%. They've become so efficient and so good and very powerful. And there are a number of guys out there, young guys, that are excellent. The litmus test, I guess, is going to be how long can they last at the highest level. And I think you have to judge a guy's career over his whole career. You just can't say, well, he was great for a year or two. But when you look at the body of the work over a period of time, was he consistently great the whole time? But there are guys kick over in St. Louis. I think they call them, I forget what they call them, Thunderthron or something. He's got a strong leg. I don't remember his name. But the Rams kicker, you got the kid in Baltimore who's excellent. These are all young guys. Janikowski out in Oakland who's banging the ball, and he looks like he's getting in good shape again. And there's so many guys out there now that are really hitting the ball well.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up. Do you think there's a particular reason why the efficiency is gone up over the last several years?
I think the kicking position, just like every position on the football field, has become so special. It's just, now you have pass rushers and pass rushing camps. You have kicking camps all over the country, and it's a year-round job. And the fact that guys in college are hitting it off the ground, it used to be that you had a tee there. So, it's just it's become a more concerted effort on the part of the coaches, the teachers, the mentors, and the players themselves to really delve into that and stick with it and not switch positions, but really used to be you were a dual player a lot of times. You take the biggest guy who's a defensive lineman and make him a kicker because you just felt he's big, so he can kick it far. Now it's so much more special, and so I think one of the reasons is guys are practicing longer, better, more efficiently, and they're just physically they're really spending the time in the gym. That they're doing it year round. They're not just sort of a soccer player who, well, that looks fun, so I'll become a kicker. Now it's really a concerted effort to say, hey, I want to become a bona fide kicker, and then really going for it like that.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming on with us. Big rivalry week, sharing some of your thoughts.
It was my pleasure, yeah. It was my pleasure.
All right. People can find your foundation website and your own personal website at mortonanderson.com, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And then you have the tabs there, and you can just click on the foundation tab once you get into my website. And it's a lot of fun stuff, old videos and pictures and things to kind of browse through. And I think it's a pretty fun sort of place to go if you want to learn more about me and what we do. That'd be great. I welcome people to go to the website and check it out.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate it, and you guys have a great evening.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
All right, we're back at Falcon Central Radio, wrapping up this week's episode. Scott and Dave, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave us with this week?
F the Saints. No, on a serious note, Darren Sproles, Jimmy Graham, Marcus Colston, it is a hard combination to contain. Their offensive line, it isn't as good as it was last year, but it should still be pretty decent. Drew Brees is still Drew Brees, but that defense is awful. I think that is where Atlanta will have the biggest advantage. Is Atlanta's defense is at least good enough to stop New Orleans' offense a couple of times. New Orleans, I don't think, can stop Atlanta's offense at all. I don't think they have any talent in their defense to do it with. Because at least Atlanta's got a pair of Pro Bowl safeties and Asante Samuel and Sean Weatherspoon. There's a guy at every level, or two guys at every level, that have a bunch of talent. The Saints don't have that at all. Saints have maybe one or two guys at each level. They got Cameron Jordan, they got Martez Wilson that might do something in the front seven. And then in the secondary, they've got Kenny Vaccaro. But all the guys are so young and not talented outside of those three that it's... Oh, and they got Kendrick Lewis, who's okay, but I don't see it. I don't see a team that can compete with Atlanta.
Dave, you have any thoughts on that? Scott's comments?
I mean, I think, I pretty much agree with Scott, except I still expect it to be a close game because Falcons Saints is always a close game, even if it defies the laws of physics to get there. It always seems to wind up close. And I think that really this is a great time for Atlanta to be playing the Saints because they're brand new to this 3-4 or mostly 3-4 system with Rob Ryan. They don't have the talent. They have some guys that are banged up. So even though they have to go into the Superdome to play the Saints, I think the Falcons have a real advantage because this defense isn't just going to be pretty lousy, but they're not even entirely sure what they're doing yet, I would say. So, this is a perfect time to catch them, and I do think the Falcons are going to start the season off right with a win. It's going to be great to see, what Steven Jackson can do in a Falcons uniform in the regular season, and I'm going to be watching Desmond Trufant really closely to see how well he does in coverage because Breeze is going to be picking on him.
Yeah. I wasn't very optimistic about the Falcons' chances this weekend, but, in the last 2 minutes, Scott and Dave, you both may have convinced me otherwise. So I'll definitely be taking another look at this game, or a deeper look at this game to try to figure out how it's going to go.
One quick final thought, though, that I just want to put out there about Trufant. Yeah, he's playing against Drew Brees, and Drew Brees is going to test him. But I think Trufant can handle Lance Moore. He's got a lot more speed than Dante Robinson has, and he's already better than Robinson was. After Moore, there's Andy Tanner and Nick Toon and Kenny Stills. There's not a lot of depth to that receiving core. So between the Falcons' 4 really solid corners, the Saints have nobody.
Okay. Well, there you have it. You can find Dave on Twitter and his website, thefalcoholic.com, and on Twitter at thefalcoholic. I am on Twitter as well, at FalcFans. Scott is on Twitter as well, at Scott Karasik. You can also find the show on Twitter, Falcons PFC. Dave, we appreciate you coming on with us, and we hope to have you back on soon.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.